Tonight, I'm sharing 3 chilling stories of unseen horrors, lurking close to home. Stories that make me question if we're ever truly alone. But before we begin, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever experienced something eerie in a place you thought was safe? Now, let's get into the stories. I first noticed something was off about my neighbors when I saw him digging in his backyard at 2 in the morning. At first, I thought it was just my half-asleep brain playing tricks on me. But when I blinked, he was still there, his shadow stretching under the dim porch light, his hands shoveling dirt like he was racing against time. I couldn't see his face, but I felt it, that unnatural stillness in the air, like the world was holding its breath. I told myself to ignore it. People do weird things. Maybe he was burying a dead pet or fixing a broken pipe. Who was I to judge? But the next night, I saw him again. Same time, same place. Except this time, he wasn't digging. He was standing there completely still, staring up at my window. I stepped back before he could see me watching. My heart pounded against my ribs. I didn't know much about him. He'd moved in 2 months ago. Quiet guy, barely spoke. I had never seen him bring in groceries, never saw any visitors. No lights on at night except for the dim glow from his basement window. Something about him unsettled me, but I pushed it aside. Maybe he was just a loner. Maybe I was overthinking. Then the smell started. It came through the vents one night, thick, rotten, like meat left out in the sun for too long. I gagged and checked my fridge, my trash, even under the sink. Nothing. But when I opened my window, I knew. It was coming from his house. I thought about calling the cops, but what would I say? Hey, my neighbor smells bad at night. Instead, I convinced myself to talk to him. Just knock on his door. Be normal. Maybe he was just a weird guy with poor hygiene. But when I went over the next morning, his door was already open. Just a crack. Hello? My voice sounded small. No answer. Just the faint creak of the house settling. I pushed the door open a little more. The smell hit me like a wall. The house was almost empty. No furniture, no pictures, nothing. Just a single chair in the middle of the living room. And the floor? Dirt. He had ripped up the hardwood, leaving the ground bare. And there were holes. Deep, uneven holes, scattered across the room. My stomach twisted. That's when I heard it. A noise from the basement. A faint shuffle. I should have left. I wanted to leave. But my legs moved on their own. Step by step, I crept toward the basement door. The smell was stronger here. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open. Darkness. A single bulb flickered weakly above the stairs. And at the bottom, something moved. I froze. A figure shifted in the shadows. Not my neighbor. Someone else. A woman. Her wrists were tied, her mouth was gagged, her eyes, wide, desperate, locked onto mine. I choked on a breath. Behind her in the dark, I heard another noise. Footsteps. Slow. Purposeful. Then I saw him. My neighbor stepped into the dim light. His face was calm, almost bored, like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. I was wondering when you'd come over, he said, voice flat. I turned and ran. I don't remember how I got home. I don't remember calling the cops. The next thing I knew, my front door was locked, my phone was in my hand, and I was gasping into the receiver, trying to explain what I had seen. When the police arrived, his house was empty. No woman. No holes in the floor. Just an abandoned, rotting house. They told me no one had lived there for years, that the house had been condemned months ago, that it had no electricity, no running water. I didn't believe them. I still don't. Because the next night, I woke up to a sound. Not outside. Inside, Scratching. Slow, deliberate scratching. Coming from inside my closet. My breath caught in my throat. I stared at the door, my pulse hammering. It was probably nothing. Maybe a rat. Maybe my mind playing tricks on me after everything that had happened. Then the doorknob twisted. I jumped out of bed, heart slamming against my ribs. Silence. I grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, my bedside lamp, and crept toward the closet. My fingers trembled as I reached for the handle. I yanked the door open. Nothing. Just my clothes, my shoes, darkness pulling at my feet. I let out a shaky breath. Then, just as I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A small patch of dirt. Fresh dirt, right there on my carpet. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then I heard it. A whisper, right behind me. "I was wondering when you'd come over." Cold fingers wrapped around my wrist. The lamp slipped from my grip, and the closet door slammed shut. It started with the footsteps. Soft, deliberate, right above my ceiling. At first, I thought I was imagining things. It was an old house. Creaky floors, shifting pipes. Nothing unusual. But then I heard it again. A slow, dragging step. Then another. The problem? I lived alone, and I didn't have an upstairs. I froze, my fingers tightening around the remote as the TV flickered in front of me. My heart pounded, every nerve in my body screaming at me to do something. But I just sat there listening. Silence. Maybe I was hearing things. Maybe I was overtired. Then the footsteps started again. This time they moved across the ceiling. Steady. Purposeful. I shot up from the couch, eyes darting toward the attic door in the hallway. The only way someone could be up there was if they had been hiding in my attic this entire time. I didn't want to check. Every instinct told me to grab my keys, walk out the door, and never come back. But I needed to know. With shaky hands, I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer. My footsteps felt too loud on the hardwood floor as I approached the attic hatch. The old wooden frame was slightly warped from years of humidity, but the latch was still intact. No signs of forced entry. I stood beneath it, my breath shallow. Then I reached up and pulled. The attic door creaked open, dust drifting down like dead skin. A sharp, stale smell hit me, like rotting wood and something else. Something sour. I lifted the flashlight, my hands trembling. Nothing but insulation and old storage boxes. A few cobwebs, no footprints, no signs that anyone had been up here. I exhaled, forcing out a shaky laugh. I'm losing it. Then, just as I started to pull the hatch shut, the light caught something in the corner. A blanket. A filthy, crumpled blanket, shoved between two wooden beams. And next to it, empty food wrappers. My stomach dropped. Someone had been up here. Recently. I stumbled back, slamming the attic door shut. My breathing was ragged, panic curling in my gut. I ran to my front door, yanking it open, ready to bolt. Then I stopped. Something was off. The air in the house had changed. I felt it before I saw it. A presence. Close. Watching. And then, in the reflection of the hallway mirror, I saw him. A man stood in my bedroom doorway. Tall. Thin. His skin pale and stretched too tightly over his bones. His clothes were ragged, hanging loosely off his frame. But it was his face that made my blood turn to ice. He didn't have one. Where his features should have been, there was only smooth, unbroken skin, as if someone had erased him from existence. He tilted his head, as if curious. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then he took a step forward. A guttural noise slipped from my throat, and my body finally obeyed. I staggered backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. I didn't look back. I ran. Out the door, into the night, my bare feet slamming against the pavement. I sprinted to my car, fumbling with the keys, my breath coming in ragged gasps. When I finally got the door open, I threw myself inside and locked it. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely jam the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching against the pavement. I didn't stop driving until I reached the next town over. I checked into a motel, shaking so hard I could barely sign my name at the front desk. The clerk gave me a weird look, but didn't say anything. I spent the night sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the door, flinching at every sound. When the sun finally rose, I called the police. They searched my house, found the blanket, the wrappers, even a few old water bottles shoved into the attic's corners. But they didn't find him. They told me it was probably a squatter, someone who had been living in my attic without me knowing. They said he was gone now, that he wouldn't come back. But I don't believe them, because last night, in the motel, I woke up to a sound. Software deliberate. A single, slow footstep right above me. I grew up in a small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone, where the biggest excitement is when a new store opens up on Main Street. My childhood home sat on the edge of a dense forest, one that stretched for miles. As kids, we played in those woods without a second thought. But there was one rule we all knew, passed down like an unspoken law: never go into the woods after dark. I never questioned it. The adults never gave us a real reason, just that it wasn't safe. They'd say things like, "You'll get lost," or "There are wild animals." But we all knew it was more than that. People whispered stories about shadows moving between the trees, about strange noises that didn't belong to any animal, about people who went in at night and never came back. I used to think it was just a way to keep kids from sneaking out, until the night I broke the rule. It happened in late October, right before Halloween. I was 17, too old to believe in ghost stories, but not old enough to ignore a dare. My friends and I were hanging out in my backyard, drinking stolen beers, when the conversation turned to the woods. "Come on, man," Darren said, nudging me. "You live right here. You telling me you've never gone in after dark?" I shook my head. "Nope. I like my life, thanks." "Bullshit," he laughed. "You scared?" I rolled my eyes. "It's not about being scared, it's a stupid rule," he interrupted. "Prove it's bullshit. Go in. 5 minutes. That's all. Walk to the clearing and back." The others joined in, egging me on. I sighed, already regretting my choices, but I couldn't back down now. "Fine," I said. 5 minutes. The clearing wasn't far, just a short walk down a barely visible path, a place we'd used as a hangout spot during the day. If I ran, I'd be back in 2 minutes. Easy. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped past the tree line. The moment I did, the sounds of the night seemed to change. Behind me, my friend's laughter faded, swallowed by the thick canopy above. The air felt different, still, heavy. The wind didn't reach inside the forest. Even the crickets had gone quiet. I shook it off and kept walking. The flashlight beam cut through the dark, bouncing off twisted roots and fallen leaves. The trees stretched high, their branches curling together like skeletal fingers. I kept my pace quick, my breath steady. Then I heard it. A whisper. Software too close. I stopped, heart pounding. It was probably just the wind, or my mind playing tricks on me. Then I heard it again. A single word, barely audible. "Run!" A chill ran down my spine. I spun around, the flashlight shaking in my grip. Nothing. Just trees and shadows. I swallowed hard and forced my legs to move faster. The clearing was just ahead. I'd reach it, turn around, and get the hell out of here. Then, just as I stepped into the open space, the flashlight flickered, and then it died. Panic surged through me. I smacked it against my palm, but it was useless. I was plunged into darkness, Then came the footsteps. Slow, heavy, moving through the trees behind me. I wasn't alone. I turned, every muscle in my body locked in terror. A figure stood just beyond the tree line. Tall, unmoving, watching. I couldn't see his face, only the outline of his body. Too long, too thin. Something was wrong about the way he stood, like he wasn't used to his own limbs. The whisper came again. Run. I didn't hesitate. I bolted, crashing through the underbrush, barely able to see. My foot caught on a root, and I hit the ground hard, my palm scraping against the dirt. Behind me, the footsteps quickened. Closer. Too fast. I scrambled to my feet, lungs burning, as I sprinted back toward the house. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. The trees blurred together, shadows twisting and reaching. Then, suddenly, I was out. I stumbled into my backyard, nearly collapsing onto the grass. Laughter rang out. I turned, chest heaving, to see my friends still sitting around the fire, oblivious to what had just happened. Darren grinned. Took you long enough. I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. My hands were shaking. My skin felt ice cold. I turned back toward the woods. Nothing. No figure. No footsteps. Just the trees standing silent as ever. Had I imagined it? The whispers. The footsteps. The thing in the woods? My friends kept talking, but their voices faded. Because something was different. The night was still quiet. Too quiet. Then I saw it. A shape, just barely visible between the trees. Watching. Waiting. And as I stared, frozen in place, I heard it one last time. A whisper curling through the cold night air. Run.